There are women who walk through life so steadily, so silently, not because they are weak, but because they are guarding a sacred foundation within. They are not loud, not boisterous. They choose a way of life that many people do not understand. And so, the world calls them the slow ones, the stubborn ones. But in truth, sometimes this silence is not a sign of lack, but rather a phase of building, a journey back to the very core of oneself. In today's video, we will go through 8 slices of truth, very personal and very real, inside the soul of a Taurus woman. Each section is a small journey, from choosing stillness to inner strength, from the very human loneliness to the gentle light of awakening. You don't need to remember or follow every part, just listen with your heart. Because who knows, somewhere in that journey, there might be a part of you waiting to be touched. And if you are feeling different, quiet, or left behind, then this video is for you. And now, if you're ready, let's begin the first chapter of this journey. A journey that begins in silence, but holds an entire, steadfast, inner world. A Taurus woman with not many friends, not because she's lonely, but because she chose to be. There are women who seem to be born not belonging to the noise. They don't like superficial crowds, they're not good at pretending to connect in the way society expects, and they don't easily express what they feel. They live in a steady inner world that others cannot easily shake. And sometimes they are solitary, not because no one loves them, but because no one is patient enough to truly understand their soul. Taurus is one such soul. A woman who carries within her a map to inner peace. She can feel the instability in a stranger's voice. She can empathize with someone's pain just from hearing a few stories, and she can love someone with all her heart simply because she sees in them a sincerity and trustworthiness. The inner world of a Taurus is not loud, but it is profoundly deep. It doesn't just hold her own memories, but also a fierce loyalty to the people who have crossed her heart. She remembers even the smallest things with enduring emotion. A promise kept, a quiet act of support, or a look that no longer feels safe. All are stored within her like a quiet, cultivated garden, never withering. And because she feels the chaos of the outside world so much, sometimes she chooses to step back, not because she doesn't need anyone, but because too many temporary presences make her feel estranged from her own peace. She chooses solitude, not because she has no other choice, but because no one is consistent enough, real enough, safe enough to stay. While she is always ready to love someone with everything she has, people only love her with whatever is convenient for them. And so, after many times of being misunderstood, taken for granted, judged, and left behind, she begins to understand. Not everyone deserves the steadfastness of her soul. She does not choose to walk alone because she is weak, but because no one is worthy of her soul's frequency of peace. On some level, this is no longer a choice, but becomes an inner vow to rather live truthfully in silence than pretend to connect in empty relationships. For Taurus, loneliness is no longer a wound. It is a sacred space, a garden she needs to cultivate. It is the time the universe gives her to clear out what does not belong, to learn to create her own safety, and to quietly enter the journey of awakening. On life's journey, there will come a time when we must walk alone, not because we were left behind, but because we are heading toward a peaceful ground that not everyone is patient enough to walk alongside. Taurus doesn't walk fast. She walks slowly to feel each of her steps. She doesn't need a rushed destination, because to her, every moment of peace can be a miracle. While others rush to be accepted, to be recognized, to be loved. Taurus only wishes to feel the world in the most genuine way, even if that means feeling pain. And from those very feelings, she begins to realize loneliness is not the enemy. It is a teacher, the one who silently stayed with her through the days no one called her name, the one who taught her how to hold herself when there was no shoulder left to lean on, the one who trained her inner strength, a soft strength, quiet, but so steady that nothing can shake it. There are souls whose mere presence is a miracle, but not everyone is quiet enough to hear that light. Taurus knows this well, and she no longer blames, no longer mourns those who cannot stay, because she understands. Those who cannot feel her simply are not deep enough to reach her world. And that's okay, but where does Taurus's true strength come from, if not from someone out there? Taurus's inner strength comes from self-reliance. Perhaps one of the most important lessons a Taurus woman can ever learn in her life is this: no one out there can save her except herself. She once lived for a long time, feeling like she needed someone beside her to feel whole. She used to think her value lay in the way someone looked at her, in the stability someone else provided, or in the recognition from a dear friend. She was dependent, she was fragile, she was vulnerable. And every time someone left her life, she asked herself, wasn't I good enough to keep? But the thing is, these Taurus women have never truly been broken. On the contrary, they have loved to the core and been disappointed just as deeply. But the difference is, they chose to rise without waiting for anyone to save them. They realized, at that very moment, when they were lying there on the cold floor, with a heart that felt barren, that no one could truly come in and save them except themselves. And it was in that moment that their inner strength was awakened, not in the form of fierce determination, not a proud declaration, but a quiet realization. They were still breathing, they were still here, they still had a chance to rebuild, even if no one held their hand through the darkness. Taurus began to understand that independence is not about appearing strong in front of others. Independence is her promise to her own heart, that from today on, she will no longer give away her precious peace unconsciously. She will no longer place her emotions in someone else's hands to be at their mercy. Instead, she keeps her softness. But now that softness is protected by a deeply mature inner strength, the independence she gained is not isolation. It is the ability to walk through this world without depending on praise or fearing criticism. It is the ability to remain gentle without being wounded by careless words. It is the ability to give love without losing herself when someone walks out of her life. She no longer needs someone to text her every night just to feel loved, because she has learned to hold herself, to whisper to herself, "I'm okay, and I am worthy of peace," even if no one else sees it. That is the deepest thing I've learned from Taurus women. Not rigid resilience, not outward strength, but a kind of quiet faith that only those who've shattered and risen again can understand. A faith that tomorrow will be gentler than today, and that she can keep going, even when no one saw how fragile she was the night before. Have you ever had to pretend to be okay? Pretend you didn't need anyone, when all you really wanted was for someone to see the tender heart behind your tough exterior? If you have, please tell me what helped you stand tall during those days. Maybe it was a word, a book, a song, or just the quiet voice inside that gently reminded you, you are not alone. Taurus's independence does not mean rejecting relationships. I used to think that the more independent a woman is, the colder she becomes. But all of those assumptions changed when I truly observed Taurus women who had matured on their own journeys. Their independence did not come with coldness. On the contrary, their hearts became even warmer than ever. They don't reject relationships. They just no longer want to trade their precious inner peace for half-hearted connections. For a Taurus woman who has endured enough pain, a true relationship must mean something far beyond material or fleeting emotional benefits. To her, a relationship is not a place to hide from loneliness. Instead, it is a sacred meeting of two souls who have healed themselves, are whole on their own, and willingly choose to be together, not out of fear of being alone, but because they truly see and cherish each other with all their gratitude. Taurus's independence does not disconnect her from the world. On the contrary, it gives her a rare clarity. She becomes clear enough to recognize which relationships are real and which are only surface level. She doesn't need large gatherings, doesn't need a big group to feel accepted. What she needs, the one thing her heart always longs for, is a genuine embrace when the world feels cold. A deep gaze that sees through her strong exterior, and a soul quiet enough to hear the silent cries she never dared to speak. And even if she never finds those things in anyone, she still chooses to live kindly, not because she needs someone to notice, not for social approval, but simply because that is who she is. Taurus's kindness comes straight from her heart, entirely independent of whether or not anyone sees it. She does not seek a relationship just to fill the emptiness inside her. She seeks a sacred space where she can truly be herself, without needing to toughen up, without needing to prove anything. That space might be with one person who is waiting for her, or maybe it's just a small room with candlelight and silence, where she can freely heal the broken pieces in her heart. But one thing is certain: she will only open her heart when it truly feels safe. Loneliness is the sacred space for Taurus to recognize her soul. I used to think loneliness was a failure. I used to be afraid of those days when no one called, no one texted. Back then, loneliness felt terrifying, like proof that I wasn't good enough to be cared for. But when I observed the lives of mature Taurus women, I learned something completely different. For them, loneliness is not failure. For Taurus, loneliness is a doorway, a gateway to a deep, inner garden that has never been explored. When the outside world has no one left to lean on, that is the very moment they hear for the first time the voice from deep within their soul, a voice they never dared to listen to before, too busy trying to please everyone else. And that is the most sacred gift loneliness offers. In a world too noisy, full of expectations and pressure, loneliness is not frightening. Loneliness is a precious opportunity to truly listen, to heal, and to understand oneself. There are questions that only in complete solitude does Taurus have the courage to ask herself honestly: what do I truly want? What truly brings me peace? And when the answer echoes from the deepest place inside her, not for anyone, not for the desire to be loved, but simply because she wants to live true to her soul, that is the moment she truly grows. Taurus develops her emotional resilience not through others, but from a heart that knows how to love itself. I used to believe that someday someone would walk into my life and help heal my deepest wounds. True recovery doesn't come from any hand out there. It comes from the very moment you decide to stop blaming fate, stop waiting for someone to save you, and start holding your heart as if it were a child most in need of love. The true strength of a Taurus doesn't lie in the fact that she never sheds tears. Her strength lies in the fact that she dares to allow herself to cry out all the pain she's held in her heart. But after every tear falls, she wipes them away herself, stands up, and moves forward, not with bitterness or regret, but with a deep gratitude that she is still alive, still feeling, still loving. Taurus never denies her emotions. Instead, she learns to embrace them. She understands that she has the right to be hurt, to be vulnerable, to fall apart. But above all, she always has the right to be gentle with herself. And from that very gentleness, a silent strength begins to grow. Have you ever stopped for a moment to forgive yourself? Forgive yourself for trying too hard to please others, for loving those who didn't deserve your love, for those nights you blamed yourself for being too soft, too vulnerable. If you have, I want you to know you are not alone. Leave a message for your heart in the comments. I want you to remember, you are beautiful while healing. You are beautiful when you are brave enough to forgive, to let go, to love yourself once again. Taurus lives true to herself, even if it means being seen as different. Society always has a standard script for women. They tell us we must be gentle but not too dreamy, successful but not too sensitive, strong but certainly know how to sacrifice. Somehow, these expectations become a tiny box that forces women to shrink themselves just to fit the desires of everyone around them. But Taurus, she was not born to live within those small limits. She does not live to become the version someone else expects. She came into this world to be herself, a steadfast soul, full of worth, and always ready to spread peace in her purest way. Her heart always follows the truth inside, and that's the biggest compass of her life. But living true to oneself is never easy. The world says, if you want to be loved, you have to be more acceptable. But Taurus understands something profoundly valuable. Only by being true to herself can she attract relationships, work, and environments that truly align with her soul. And so, instead of trying to fit in, she chooses to shine in her own way. She once tried to live how others wanted, tried to wear a perfectly fitting smile, tried to suppress her core values because she was afraid others would call her too stubborn, too rigid. But the more she tried to become someone else, the more she felt herself disappearing. And then one day, she chose to return. She returned to her true self, knowing full well she would be misunderstood, judged as too slow, too practical, too unyielding. But you know what? She's not weak. She's just brave enough to live honestly, something not everyone has the courage to do. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever been judged just for living differently, for loving differently, for wanting things others don't understand? Have you ever been labeled as too stubborn, too slow, or too principled? If you have, leave a gentle message in the comments, a message from your heart saying you understand this, that we are not alone on this journey of living authentically. Independence helps Taurus see her soul's path more clearly. There's one thing I've always deeply believed, that when everything in life starts to quiet down, that is also the moment when the call from deep within each of us becomes the clearest. For Taurus, the most magical moment in life doesn't happen when everything is going well. The most magical moment usually happens when she stops, when she's brave enough to sit still amidst the chaos, to ask her own heart one very simple question: what truly brings me peace? It is in that tiny moment that a door quietly opens, revealing a path she has never seen so clearly before. It's not a path someone else paved for her, not a safe, easy road that society readily approves of, but it is the only path that truly aligns with her soul, where she can live fully, meaningfully, and in harmony with the mission she came to this earth to fulfill. Sometimes life pulls us down paths that don't belong to us simply because we're afraid of being judged. Taurus was once like that, but the more she followed that path, the more disconnected she felt, from her own heart. And then, in the quietest moment of her life, she heard a very small yet incredibly powerful whisper rise from deep within her heart. Follow the light within. That was the moment she realized that when she's no longer pulled by others' expectations, she can finally live with true purpose. She knows that she was not born to be a copy of anyone else. She came here to share what only she possesses: deep steadfastness, boundless loyalty, and a healing light meant for those who are in turmoil. Once Taurus has seen her soul's path clearly, she begins to rearrange her life. She learns how to say no to things that no longer align, not out of selfishness, but because she realizes the greatest thing she needs to protect is the peace in her soul. This is the invaluable lesson that Taurus brings to us all: the courage to live the truest life. Because in the end, there is nothing more precious than living true to the deepest call of your heart. Taurus is not alone. She is returning home. I used to be terrified of the emptiness that came with having no one by my side. But then I met Taurus. Women who had gone through countless wounds, yet still moved forward with gentle, compassionate hearts. They taught me an invaluable lesson. Someone with no friends isn't someone who's been left behind. They are someone who has found the most sacred friend, themselves. Taurus is not lonely. She is being protected by life, being guided by her soul away from unworthy relationships, from people who can't see the light within her. She is learning how to befriend her own soul before anyone else enters her life again. I understand that in the moments when others slowly leave, it is also the moment another door gently opens, a door that doesn't lead to the outside world, but into the very heart of her being. It is a sacred journey where she sees herself with truly gentle eyes for the first time. Are you walking alone? Do you feel lost in a world that's too vast, too noisy, and sometimes too cold? If you are, please take a moment to pause. Leave a message for yourself in the comments. A small, gentle note, nothing fancy, just something honest. A message that says you have not abandoned yourself and you will always be here, gently holding your own wounded heart. I want you to remember that even if today you have no one beside you, you have never truly been alone. There is a Taurus woman inside you, strong, growing, and slowly returning to her own light. You've come a long way, much farther than you ever thought. The tears, the sleepless nights, the lonely days, they were not meaningless. They were all preparations for you to find yourself again, to know that your true worth is never measured by how many people are around you, but by the genuine love you give to yourself each day. Remember this: the journey back to yourself is always the most beautiful and meaningful one. If you're still walking alone, if the world is still too loud and you are still too quiet, please know this: you are not lost. You are simply walking slowly because your soul needs to be listened to more carefully. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just need to be honest with yourself. Because a Taurus woman, even when no one stands beside her, can still become the steadiest light in this world. You are not alone. You are simply returning home, and that is breathtakingly beautiful.